Hello, this is Yarrow, and welcome to episode 17 of Vested Capital, featuring my guest, Sonia Petkovich. Vested Capital is a podcast about how people make money and put their capital to work. I interview startup founders, angel investors, venture capitalists, crypto and stock traders, real estate investors, and leaders in technology. Sonia today on the episode shares the story behind the creation of MeowTel. MeowTel is a hotel for cats, or really it's a person who comes into your house and looks after your cat while you're away. That's the simple premise that the business is built on. You can consider it like an Uber for cat sitting. Although, as Sonia explains during this interview, the original version of the business was an Airbnb for cat sitting where the cat would go to the sitter's house. Now the sitter comes to the cat. The company is one of my angel investments. That's how I was made aware of it. That's via Jason Calacanis' syndicate. And it's been an interesting story to sort of see because I invested right before the COVID pandemic kicked in, which, as you can imagine, had a dramatic impact on a company that's all about doing something when people travel, in the case of MeowTel. So Sonia went through quite a roller coaster ride during COVID, having to very quickly scale down her company to reduce costs and try and ride through the storm that is COVID. But she's very much made it through the worst of it. And now the company has been growing really, really well, especially as people begin to travel and, of course, need pet sitters. And they have pets because a lot of people during COVID got themselves a new cat. So those cats need to be looked after as these people now travel. So we hear about how Sonia created her business. It's a two-sided marketplace. She needs the people who do the cat sitting and the people who have the cats. As you'll hear, she's very much big on quality control, hiring and vetting the right people to be cat sitters. And then also she talks about growing the marketing side of actually getting the customers for the business. We hear a little bit about her background. Interestingly enough, the very first version of MeowTel was kind of like a side project while Sonia was still finishing her studies. So it is interesting to hear the difference between doing something on the side versus going all in. And you can tell that really made a difference in the case for MeowTel. It is a company that's moving towards its Series A. However, it's now profitable, so I'm not sure if Sonia, as she said in this interview, she may not do her Series A if she can just keep growing the company at the pace it's going at now without needing more capital. She definitely will. Before you hear from Sonia, once again, I'd like to remind you the sponsor for today's episode is inboxdone.com. A company that provides an email assistant, a specialist who is brilliant at communication to come in and manage and reply to your email messages for you, as well as any area where communication is important. So if you deal with a lot of help desk support tickets, you have a lot of questions or comments coming in on your Facebook or Instagram posts, or even the ads you're running, you might be getting a lot of comments made to those. You need to manage them. Any area, direct messages, certainly multiple inboxes, as well as doing, the simple admin tasks that come from email, like updating software, managing customers, working with other members of your team. It's like a virtual assistant who specializes in everything that's inside your inbox and all the tasks that come from managing your email. That's inboxdone.com. We are just about to hit our 4th year of business. We have an amazing array of clients that we love and help in all kinds of different industries. Everyone has email. Everyone's dealing with the challenge of email being a distraction and a time suck. So if, like me, I was looking for help with email and I went looking for an assistant to simplify my life, to get freedom, to be able to travel, to be able to start new businesses, write a book, all the different things you might be thinking about doing, I was thinking about doing them. And really, it wasn't until I was able to fully delegate my business with an email manager as one of the key components of that I was able to experience that kind of true lifestyle freedom that we're all after. So if you are after it too, if you want to simplify your life and your business, head to inboxdone.com and we can help by assigning you a couple of inbox managers to make your life more simple. Okay, that's it. Let's dive in now to the interview with Sonia Petkovich. Hi, Sonia. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me here, Yarrow. I really appreciate it.
Okay, so I've actually been secretly really looking forward to this interview. A few reasons. One, you're running a business about cats, which is awesome. Two, you're basically in my portfolio as an angel investment via Jason Calacanis. So it's extra fun to see the growth of your company. I feel like I'm a tiny part of it, which is always cool. And on the flip side, I also saw what you guys kind of went through during COVID. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that as well. Let's start. What exactly is MeowTel? It's the name of your company, meowtel.com. I said it's about cats, but what do you do exactly?
Yeah, so we are the #1 cat sitting app in the country. Cats are very territorial animals. They're skittish. They get freaked out anytime you take them out of their home environment. So when a cat parent is traveling, you can't put them in a hotel. You can't put them in a kennel. They really should be staying home. So we specialize in in-home care. You can book a MeowTel sitter to come to your home to do drop-in visits once or twice a day, or even do overnight stays in your home to keep the kitties company while you're away. And it's really the optimal, ideal solution for cat parents because, like I said, cats are not dogs. They do not like to go for walks. They don't like to go play with their dog friends. So bringing that perfect hospitality to our cat parents in their home is really what we do best and what we want to deliver to every cat parent here in the US and then worldwide.
Yes, and hopefully Montreal very soon. As I was saying before I hit record, I grew up with cats. In fact, I used to, for a small period of my life, we had a caravan in the back of my parents' house in the backyard as sort of like a third bedroom when we had a blended family. And we had some stray cats adopt us. And one of the cats gave birth to kittens in my sock drawer right next to my bed. So that was quite the experience with these little kittens sleeping next to me. Yes, it was very cute. And the other time they gave birth in our washing machine, which was very convenient for cleaning up afterwards. But yeah, it's interesting what cats choose to do, where they put their babies. But as I also said to you, I haven't had cats because I've been traveling as a digital nomad for a good, 5-10 years now. And it's just hard to, make that bond. And then, you can't bring it with you so easily, especially if you're crossing large oceans, it becomes difficult. And I don't think cats really enjoy jumping to new homes constantly either, the way we might do it. So I'm so excited that your company exists, and especially excited for you guys to come to Montreal, where I currently live. Briefly, in terms of how long you've been running this and what are some numbers we can share with how well it's going so far?
Yeah, so I've been on this full time for about 4 years. I just dove right on in after I finished my MBA at Oxford in the fall of 2017. And we found our first investors a couple weeks after, and it's just kind of been snowballing ever since, which is really exciting. We started off with just a handful of customers, and then it's grown to over 10,000 customers across the country. We had an interesting year with COVID over the last 12 months, but now we're seeing 5x year-over-year growth, which is awesome. We're coming out of this even stronger than we were before. And we're in over 150 cities across the US, with LA, New York being some of our largest markets.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I mean, COVID, initially it sounds like it would have been extremely challenging, but on the flip side, I think a lot of people got cats for the first time, or new pets. So as you're probably experiencing now, there's the runoff of all those new pet owners wanting to travel and looking for a service like MeowTel. Before we talk about MeowTel, though, I'd love to go a little bit back into your background. I know we were kind of joking off air. Your name, Petkovich seems almost too good to be true a little bit. It's like, I know one of the most famous tennis players, Margaret Court, and all these kind of funny situations like that. But my first thought actually with Petkovich was your Eastern European heritage. But of course, nowadays, just because you have the name, like myself, I wasn't born in Eastern Europe, but I was born in Australia to Ukrainian father and another Eastern European mother. Is that a similar story for you, born in the US to Eastern European parents, or where does the origin come from?
Not even close. My parents are third, fourth, fifth generation. My dad's side is from Pennsylvania. My mom's side is originally from Pennsylvania too, but now they live in the South, Arkansas and Texas. So even though people think I was born in Russia or Eastern Europe, it couldn't be further from the truth. So born and raised in San Diego, kind of spent most of my life in California. I'm back here in San Francisco now, which is, it's nice to be back. But yeah, born and raised US.
American true blue then. So in terms of your upbringing then, I'm guessing in San Diego, or maybe more recently in San Francisco, but if we go back sort of university or even high school, was there any entrepreneurial examples in the family, anyone close to you that kind of made you think of entrepreneurship as an option, or did it really come later in life?
It was funny. My mom would make fun of me. Like growing up, I would run I was constantly trying to like come up with business ideas. I was running like a store in our own house. I would try to charge my siblings for toast. And then in high school, I got really into web design, like back when Flash was really popular and all these like bloggers had these Flash websites. So I was doing some of that. I bought some domain names when I was 15, 16 and got my first credit card. And I was trying to essentially make like an e-commerce surf brand. Growing up in San Diego, you're by the beach, you're surfing, you're in the water all the time. And that was kind of the lifestyle I was a part of. And so I was always dabbling in things and trying to find something that I'm really passionate about that I could then monetize. So it's always been part of who I am. I did have some examples for my dad. He was starting his own projects and companies and stuff like that. But it took a turning point in college because I wanted to go to college for graphic design since I was building all these Adobe Flash websites. My mom's like, you won't make any money, Sonia. You have to get a business degree. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me, Mom? Like, okay, fine. I'll take my mom's advice. So I went to Berkeley and got my undergrad in business administration. My first job out of college was with a big corporate company called Altria, big tobacco. And then, I got a couple promotions and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like, I feel like I can do more. I want to go explore what's out there in the world. And right around the time that I was thinking about pursuing my MBA, and I wanted to go to a European school or England, my childhood cat passed away. And so that was kind of the whole impetus behind the idea for MeowTel. Fast forward, and here we are today. It's all because of my childhood cat.
So then from the point of going to Europe, there was no, like, did you think, okay, I'm going to start something while traveling, or was it like when I come back, what was the plan then?
Yeah, I actually started MeowTel before I went to grad school. It was only a 1-year program, luckily. And so I came up with the idea in 2015. I incorporated everything. We built an MVP in about 8 months and launched it. And I was like, great, we built it. They will come. It'll be a great success in like 12 months. But starting a company, especially a consumer company, is really, really hard and takes a lot of money and grit and scrappiness. And so I kind of spent the gap year, 2015 to 2016, figuring things out, how to be an entrepreneur, how to really run a company, all the legal things you need to think about, which is totally not fun. Then I went overseas to do a year at Oxford. I was still running the company from Oxford. We would have bookings. I would have to do these marketing emails in the middle of class. So I was trying to manage it as best as I could with a full-time schedule. And then throughout the MBA, I was like, man, look at all my peers getting these cool finance jobs and consulting. And there's a lot of pressure to go pursue that track. But I was like, I have this great idea. It's built. What happens if I dedicate myself to it 100% and see how far I can take it? And so I decided to take the less traveled path, and it's worked out for me so far. But I just consider myself very lucky because most startups fail. So hopefully we won't be in that bucket and things are going well. But there's a lot in store in the future for us.
Do you mind talking about that MVP? Because, it doesn't sound like, correct me if I'm wrong, you came from any sort of engineering, programming, development background. I mean, Flash, I know, was sort of a programming language with the design. I never dove too deep into it, but I know there was some coding involved with that. When it came to your initial thought, okay, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but were you thinking, let's build the Uber for cat sitting? Or I know there were some comparable similar services for maybe dogs, and you're thinking we need this for cats. Like, what was the germ of the idea? And then how did you get the MVP made?
Yeah, it was really originally pitched as Airbnb for cats. But what happened is that confused a lot of people because people were thinking, oh, great, the cat goes and stays with somebody else. And that was initially the main core idea of MeowTel, is our sitters are hosts and the cat gets dropped off to stay in a home environment elsewhere rather than being at a cat hotel. But it turns out cats don't even like those situations. So we offered hosting as a service option on MeowTel for about 2 years. Everything that could go wrong would always go wrong during the hosting reservation. So we made a decision, I think this was in 2018 or 2019, to say, nope, we're not going to do hosting. We're going to be the best at in-home cat care in the client's home. And so we no longer pitch it as Airbnb for cats. I think the corollary would be like Uber, where you can get an on-demand cat sitter. And we always have to explain it a little more because we still get a lot of phone calls like, are you a cat hotel? Like, can I drop my cat off at your location down the street? And we explain, no, that's not the ideal solution. here's what we offer. So that's been an interesting evolution to learn how to even pitch your company and learn what your customers want. And for us, really what the end customer wants, the cats, is to stay home. So that was a great learning process.
So then the first version of your software, did you kind of have to throw that completely out and build something new, or could you use it, or how did it go?
So I poured all this money to find this development team, and huge mistake to spend that much money on your MVP. But we actually still use most of it in our architecture right now. Because we have so much technical debt that's accumulated over the past 5 years, we are in the process of rebuilding, so everything runs smoothly and it can set us up for the next stage of growth. But it has lasted us this long. It's really just some of the front-end design and the experience and the services that have changed throughout the years. And of course, the copy transitioning from Airbnb for cats to really in-home cat sitting type of deal.
Okay, it's good. So you could change the front-end copy to pivot the idea a little bit. Maybe not a pivot, just an adjustment of how the service is delivered, and then still use the same software. That's good. So it wasn't a complete waste of hiring developers and creating that MVP. Well, yeah, yes, no, maybe.
Not really, but I mean, yes.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. I'd rather do it differently, but it got us to where we are, right? So, yeah. So I think of an idea like MeowTel, and it's a challenge because it's somewhat of a two-sided marketplace, right? Where you have to have the people willing to cat sit and you need the customers who want to hire them. Always a challenge because it's a supply-demand balance you have to do. With your own initial thinking of this business, and maybe, I guess the first few years you were sort of half studying, half running it, what was your expectations around how hard it would be to build a marketplace? Because I don't know your background. It sounds like you weren't sort of studying entrepreneurship and like, oh, I see how Uber got started, or I see how Airbnb got started in terms of starting with the supply side and then moving to the demand side and vice versa. So how much of your thought process was around marketplace construction during those early years?
So I know there's all of these fancy playbooks and I guess PDFs or articles that a lot of VCs put out about the perfect playbook for B2C marketplace type of thing. Unfortunately, being a first-time founder, I didn't really dive into as much of the advice pieces as I should have to really understand the mechanics of a two-sided marketplace. My whole thinking was like, this is such a good idea that if we build it, they will come, and that's that. And then it will be a flywheel from there. There was really no strategy behind the launch, how we've grown thus far. I shouldn't be saying this publicly, but I am, because this is what every first-time founder goes through. And we got really lucky in the early days where I was going to conventions like CatCon. Have you heard about this?
It's a great name, but no, I have not heard of CatCon, no.
So it's the biggest cat convention specifically for cat owners in the world. Every year in LA, there's about 20,000, 30,000 crazy cat people that just show up for this. And I think I went the second year that it was happening. I dragged my brother with me. We got MeowTel branded items like pens and stickers, and we would walk around the convention just handing them out. And we actually, between that and Craigslist posts, which cost, $3 a pop, we got our first couple of wonderful sitters who are still on the platform today, 4 or 5 years later, because they've almost made a career out of this, which is really cool to see. So, we got lucky by just finding the right supply to initially drive those first couple of customers to be like, okay, I think this is a trustworthy enough platform to let me give it a go. This person looks like they really love cats. But if we hadn't been like that scrappy and just tried to find sitters wherever we could, I don't think we would have made it that far. We have learned a lot about what the right type of sitter is for us. It's not so much about cat experience, it's about other things like attention to detail, communication style. So that's been a great learning experience for us, and we're constantly finessing the process.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing you wouldn't know until you start, really, as well, learning the nuance there. So it sounds like you did, it makes sense. You have to do the supply side first, right? Because no cat sitters, you can't have anything to sell.
Right.
How, in terms of, maybe I should split this into two phases, I don't know. It feels like you had your first phase where you're the Airbnb, and it was kind of not a side hustle, but a half project while you finish your studies, and then it switched to being your main thing. You're going all in, and that's when it's more like the Uber for cat sitting with the sitters coming to the house. How has your marketing strategy changed over time? Is it a case of do you need to still go attend conferences and put out Craigslist ads? And on the flip side with the marketing, because, you can find a great cat sitter, but then you have no one hiring them and they've got no work. So they go and get a job somewhere else, right? So how is the scaling been, especially maybe in the last, it's hard to say because COVID, I can imagine it's been all over the place with COVID too. So, but simply put, how has it been to balance the two-sided marketplace growth?
Yeah, it was hard to manage it through COVID because all these sitters just loved the idea and wanted to become sitters with us. But then we would have to kind of manage their expectations and say, you guys probably won't get booked for 6 months due to COVID. Like, just be ready for that. And unfortunately, we did have quite a number of sitters churn through the past 12 months because they weren't getting bookings due to COVID impacting travel. Luckily, it looks like we've turned the corner and now we're in a really good equilibrium of onboarding X amount of sitters each week. By week 4, they have their first booking. And then once they get their first booking, that is really what locks them in. And then they're like, okay, this is cool. I'm going to do this as a long-term side hustle. On the customer side, we've tried a lot of different things from Craigslist to Google Ads, just thrown money at different tests to see what sticks and what converts. Luckily, or it could be, bad luck for us, is we have one channel that works really well. Google is amazing because think about it. When you're a cat parent, you're about to travel, you're stressed. Where do you go to instantly find a cat sitter? You're not going to go to Facebook. You're not going to go to Instagram. You're going to go to Google. And so paid advertising through Google, organic search, working on our SEO and optimizing that has put us in a good position to be where we are today. I think when we talk to investors, they're always like, oh my gosh, Facebook, Instagram, those are going to be amazing channels for you. But those are just passive consumption when you're on those platforms. And yeah, you might see an ad for cat sitting, but then you'll forget about it. So it requires a lot of money to constantly put ads in front of them until they're ready to travel and catch them at the right time. So we're still trying to figure out those two channels, but for the most part, we're all about AdWords, SEO, and just being top of the page on Bing, Google, etc.
I can imagine word of mouth is pretty helpful too, since once you use it once and someone asks you about how did you travel, look after your cat, you mentioned MeowTel. So do you mind if we go back to your story? So I am really curious about the first time you decided to raise funding and also how you dealt with COVID, but where does that come in? So you graduated, then you decided to go all in with MeowTel. What did you do at that point?
Yeah, so it was October 2017. I was super broke. I had all this student debt. And I was like, well, I don't have a choice. I have to go find an investor who's willing to put money towards cats and this idea. I was in Dallas at the time. And amazingly enough, I found a new-ish accelerator there. I was part of their first cohort under the new managing director. I got our first $10,000 check. I thought it was like so much money. I mean, when we're spending like $10 a day in Google AdWords and we think that's like going to make us broke, that's how bad things were. But that got us enough money to, make a couple of improvements based on what we had learned in the past year and get a couple customers in some key cities that just would come back and keep booking. And that's all you need to really start to build a big business. That got us enough traction through Q4, which is always our peak season, to catch the interest of another accelerator down in Austin. And they wrote a $100,000 check. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the equivalent of $100 million. And again, that got us enough traction all the way through 2018 to then bring us out to San Francisco, go through Jason Calacanis' launch accelerator, get another $100,000 check. And then he eventually syndicated us through the syndicate, which was awesome. We closed a small seed round right before COVID. I think we signed the closing docs January 2020. So we were really lucky in that regard. And then COVID hit. I remember the day when San Francisco announced their lockdowns. I think it was like March 16th. And my co-founder looked at me and he's like, are you okay? Your face is completely pale. Because we just had cancellation after cancellation coming in. I'm like, oh my gosh, this business is going to go to zero overnight. So we had to make some tough decisions. We downsized. We went bare bones and we just focused on what we could control, which was product. So that's how we used the year.
Yeah, and that's about the time I invested in that with Jason, the syndicate raise. And I do remember it was like, I mean, as I said earlier, cats, great, I'm investing. But then B, I was thinking through all the angel investments I've done and which ones would be more impacted by COVID. I'm like, well, no more traveling. No one needs their cats to be sat because they're going to stay home with their cats. So you would have been one of the most hardest hit by this. And obviously, Everything you just described that you did makes complete sense. You just have to get your costs right down. You know you're going to get cancellations, and then wait and see, I guess, would have been part of it, right? Because we didn't know how long COVID was going to impact travel. It's still going, I guess, in some ways, but travel has certainly picked up. I'm kind of curious, maybe now that we are exiting COVID, you get to think about your company less about surviving a pandemic and more about growing into the next phase. And I would tie this back into I guess this is the biggest raise you did with the syndicate, right? So that would have been, the biggest investment you had. I'm always curious because you don't hear much about after the investment, how as a founder you think about using this money, because it's a lot at once and you obviously have to plan a runway, but at the same time, you want to make the best use of that money. Like and I totally understand COVID would have flipped those ideas on your head, but now that we're out of it, how do you think about the best way to make use of investing money?
Yeah, for us, it really comes down to the two sides of the marketplace. So one, make sure we have 100% sitter coverage across the country. That means onboarding as many sitters as we can. What we need to be able to do that is get butts in chairs here at HQ and people who are capable of vetting and onboarding them. We have the most rigorous sitter vetting process across like the major pet platforms, including Rover and Wag, where we do face-to-face Zoom calls with all of our sitters so we get to know them. They are very clear on our policies and expectations. And, because we wouldn't feel comfortable putting someone publicly on our site if we hadn't at least had a conversation with them and seen them face to face. So that does require a bit of time and quite a number of staff members to help with that. So that's really where the money's going on the supply side. Luckily for like sitter acquisition, there's a lot of word of mouth. And we have good SEO with cat sitting app and cat sitting jobs. And then we get random shout outs on TikTok, which drives like hundreds of applications for free to us that we don't have to spend a ton of money to get the right number of sitters. So that's great. On the flip side, for customers, really, managing our monthly spend for PPC. And it takes, seasonal highs and lows. Like Q4, our CAC dropped significantly because there's just so much demand that we don't need to spend a whole lot to get a ton of conversion. In the slower times, such as Q1, our CAC increases a lot. So we do have to spend a bit more. So just balancing how we want to spend it and which digital channels we do want to spend. And then, of course, allocating a bit of money to constantly test to see where we can acquire more customers and more efficiently.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. It's funny as you talk. I run a company. We provide email management. I think I might have mentioned to you at one point. It's so similar in the sense that people go searching for a solution, and we get most of our customers from Google too, because it's when they need to solve a problem. And one of the things that I struggle with is this: you want to spend as much money as you can in some shape or form to get as many customers as you can. But of course, the supply side has to meet that demand. So you probably feel the same way. You want to quality control the people you're hiring. As you just said, you have a great hiring process and vetting and onboarding process. As a founder, do you feel the same? Do you feel like I wish I could just press the button and get as many customers as I can? Or do you actually like the balancing of both sides? And obviously you see it's necessary.
The balancing is necessary, but I wish there was a magic button where if I press it, I get 2 new onboarding specialists, 500 new sitters, and then 1,000 new customers. I think what we currently struggle with is, we doubled the size of the internal team overnight in the past 6 weeks. Or not overnight, in the past 6 weeks. And just hiring the right people for the core team, that in itself is that could take my entire week. But that's the CEO's job, right? To hire the best people, get them into the roles, allocate your resources accordingly. So I think right now we just need to do more of that, hiring for the core team so that we can eventually start pushing the buttons on both sides of the marketplace. So, we'll see customers come in like a newer city that we recently got a couple of great sitters in. And for some reason or another, they're outside the sitter's radius or the sitter's actually not available. And to see us, spend money to acquire them and then no sitter can help, there's nothing more frustrating to me than seeing those scenarios happen. So of course we need massive sitter coverage. So, getting the onboarding team first, then get the sitters, then get the customers. It's a process, but it's necessary. Yeah,
I juggle. I am curious then, what is the day in the life of Sonia right now in terms of, you're CEO, but are you just an HR manager right now? Or what is the day in the life like for you?
I do a little bit of everything. I even do cat sitting on my own platform. I what is it called? Dog fooding, the platform. Yeah, so I have my own kitty clients and my own sitter profile on MeowTel. So usually I'll have, a kitty visit in the morning with my own clients. And then I get into the office, talk to my technical co-founder. We talk about product for a little bit, talk about bugs that came in overnight. And then I kind of check out the phone calls, see what kind of tickets are going on with our customers. I still make a lot of reference calls in the sitter process. I still answer our 8444 MeowTel number at least a couple times a day. So a lot of our customers and sitters that call in, they're actually still talking to the CEO. From there, I'll, take a look at Slack, see which team member needs guidance, how I can help clarify anything that someone's stuck on. And then I do try to spend a few hours each day reviewing our processes, budgets, allocating our ad spend accordingly based on new sitters that we have. So I guess that would be a representative day, but it varies so much. But just, spending about an hour on each of the core functions.
Yeah, that's really varied. Are you deliberately making the choice to still be a cat sitter and still answer the phone just to keep your pulse on that part of the business?
And also, we're a seed stage company. I live in San Francisco. I don't have the highest CEO salary out there. So of course, the extra income helps me a lot personally, but it's always interesting to talk to our customers, see what the actual sitter experience is like. Because I think if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to provide excellent customer service. We consistently have NPS scores that are over 90 because we are so in touch with the experience, and that trickles down from the CEO down to the entire team and then out to our sitters. So even if we're, Series A, Series B, I'm still going to be cat sitting on the platform. I'm still going to be talking to our sitters and answering calls because I think that's so crucial to the overall experience.
Do you foresee, or maybe this is already in place, every new employee has to be a cat sitter at least once as part of their onboarding with MeowTel?
That would be ideal, but we do outsource a lot of our team. So we have team members in the Philippines and Mexico, which helps with our overhead. So they can't be sitters because we're only in the US, but our training is such that it's so thorough. And I expect every team member to know all of our processes through and through and I share my personal sitting stories. So I think they have enough knowledge at their fingertips that helps them understand what's going on.
I guess long enough time frame, if it is global, at some point you could have every employee potentially do at least one cat sitting session, but obviously you're not in Mexico yet and so on. I'm curious, so you mentioned your Series A as a possibility as the next sort of phase in growth, I guess, as well, or at least fueling growth. How do you prepare for that? I know you're a first-time founder, but I've never raised a Series A. I was bootstrapped. What is it like to prepare for that as the CEO? And I always wondered too, how much of a distraction do you find fundraising is versus running the business? I know you have to do both, but how do you find the whole experience?
I will answer the second part of the question first. Fundraising is a nightmare. I don't enjoy it. Even raising our pre-seed seed, that was like pulling teeth. I had, dozens and dozens of meetings, and I know that's standard, but it's just I am such a people pleaser and I want to be so involved with the business and know what the customers are experiencing that I would rather dedicate my time to just providing an amazing experience rather than going out and raising money. If you can build a business such that you don't need to raise funding, then to me, that's a much stronger business in the long term and the only type of business you should be building. So to answer the first part of your question, Series A isn't off the table. All of our investors do want us to go raise money. They're like, your metrics are amazing. Now's the time to go raise. The market is hot. And I'm like, yeah, but we're profitable. We're growing at a really nice pace. Why would I go dilute myself when we don't need to? And the interesting thing about MeowTel is we collect cash up front, usually about 30 days in advance of the booking happening. So we have, a really nice free cash flow happening in case we need to use it on payroll or increase our ad budgets. So it's like a 0% loan that we constantly have from our customers. So keeping that in mind is just if the terms make sense and we find a great lead who we do want to work with over the course of 10 years, then I would be open to talking about a Series A and getting them on our cap table. But until we find the right people and the right terms, we're still just going to be scrappy, bootstrap it, because we did reach profitability as of last month. So it's just a really great place to be in right now.
Yeah, I think Jason uses the term Pegasus, I think, for someone who doesn't need to do more rounds because they can grow off of cash flow. I think Fitbit was the company he was talking about more recently that did that. And sure, why not? Like for all the reasons you just said, don't have to dilute anymore. You can still grow at the pace that investors are happy with. You're happy with where you go. In terms of that, then, what is your vision for where this is going? I know clearly passionate about the business itself, so you probably see yourself doing this for 10 years, but where do you want it to go? What are you most excited about?
I'm most excited about just providing a service that has never been offered to the cat parent community and doing it so exceptionally well that no one is going to leave your service in churn. So I usually compare this. I know this is a silly comparison, but do you know In-N-Out Burger?
Yep.
So they do one thing and they do it exceptionally well, and their customers rave about them, yada, yada. That is the equivalent of what I want MeowTel to be for the cat world. So yes, we can eventually expand into other services or even products, even though that's becoming a more and more crowded space. As you have more niche consumer brands hop in there and notice that there is a gap for all cat parents. And services are way more difficult to do because you do need the supply, you need the right supply, you need a loyal supply. So if we can figure out the services and do it really, really well, that will be a huge and successful business on its own. But once we have that part down, the opportunities are endless and we can just conquer each service vertical for cat parents as we wish. So that could include in-home grooming, in-home vet visits, anything related to in-home experiences, even cat health insurance, you never know. So kind of building out this full stack model, assuming we can do each exceptionally well, a la In-N-Out.
Makes sense. Do you ever think, like, especially now with the growth you're going through, does the idea of one day you might be a unicorn founder and all the potential publicity and limelight that might be shown on you, especially as a female founder, does that ever cross your mind?
It's a little terrifying. I am naturally an introvert. I don't use social media. I have Instagram, Facebook accounts, but I'm never on them. I am willing to do interviews, but I don't want my face on the front cover of a magazine or a blog. So while, that is the end goal, to have a company that big that garners that much publicity, am I going to be the right person at that stage to handle that? I don't know. And as a CEO of a startup, you always have to be the mindset of, yeah, you are replaceable too. For this stage, I might be the perfect CEO. For years 10 through 20, I'm probably not going to be the perfect CEO for the company. So
we'll wait and see.
We'll cross that bridge when it comes.
That's exciting. Sonia, for the people listening in who especially are interested in a marketplace business like yours, like they're thinking of starting something, might be very front-facing to the general public the way you are, or maybe it's more business to business, but it's still a marketplace. They have to find the supply and they have to find the demand, and there's probably some kind of software that needs to be built to make this at least begin the project. How would you advise they start, especially now that you sort of had almost two phases, the build it with a development house and then change the topic a little bit, and now you're doing a complete rebuild of your technology stack, so you kind of have this experience. How would you suggest, or even how would you recommend Sonia from 5-6 years ago get started if she was starting, right now?
So luckily now, and I know Jason talks about this all the time, there's the no-code drag and drop apps that you can build. Of course, you want to prove out your idea because there's so many, there's still a lot of good ideas that are out there that you can build a big company around, but increasingly we're going to run out of ideas, especially around marketplaces. How many more marketplaces can you build for what services and products you want to deliver? So use like a no-code app to build your MVP, so you're not spending upwards of like $100,000 like I did on your MVP with a full development team. And then validate that your supply wants to provide the service or product that they are going to do through your marketplace. Validate and talk to customers before you even work on the MVP. That's something I didn't do well in the early days. I was just like, aha, I'm a cat parent. I had this problem. I now want to go solve it. I didn't talk to anyone else who owns a cat. Huge mistake. So talk to people who would potentially be your end users. See what their pain points are, because they'll probably be very different from how you're thinking about solving the problem that you're trying to solve. So using those insights, you'll be able to build a better marketplace, and that will also dictate what you need to get on the supply side and how you vet them or find them and stuff like that. So just do your research. You probably want to do, 50 to 100 hours of research for both sides, and then figuring out how you're going to build the MVP. And then if everything checks out and it sounds like your supply could really solve the problem for your customers, go build it. But again, use the drag and drop, don't build a development team. So you shouldn't spend more than, I don't know, $5,000 to $10,000 on this whole process and building your MVP in full.
And do you recommend raising some kind of finance or joining an accelerator like you did?
Yeah, I think accelerators are really helpful. Being a first-time founder, a female founder coming from the corporate world, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea about how to review term sheets and what cap tables are and all that fun stuff. And they teach you all of that. And they also teach you a lot of great like Y Combinator, I guess like guidelines on how to build a great company that customers love. So it's a great 12 to 13 weeks that you're going to spend just learning about how to run a company and be an entrepreneur. Yes, they will take a big chunk of your company up front, but I think that is worth it if you are a first-time founder. If you're a second-time founder, you can skip the accelerator stage and either bootstrap or go raise a seed or pre-seed. But first-time founders, yes, do an accelerator. And if you can somehow manage to build a company that people will pay for from day one, then maybe you don't even need to raise funds.
Yeah, it depends on your business model. And just in terms of raising, do you think, especially for someone brand new, that they should get to a point where they show some kind of money, revenue, profit, or traction of some kind before they attempt the raise? Because I know some people think it's a catch-22. I can't get into raising money because they want me to show $10,000 a month in run rate, but I can't get to $10,000 a month in run rate until I build the first version of my software, my MVP, and try and get customers, and I haven't got money to do that. So what do you think? Is it a case of friends and families and fools, as they say, to get your first investment and try and build the first version with that? Like, what's your advice?
I think so. And I think if you're going to be a founder, you need to take that risk yourself too and invest your own money, or else investors will be like, why am I going to take the risk? So, and I struggle with the whole idea of like, oh, I can go raise money off of, my 10,000 active monthly users that's growing every single month. Because the question is like, how do you monetize them eventually? And yes, that works for social platforms. And I know there's a lot of different tactics you can use to then, take the Facebook route. But to me, it's like, if you're going to start a company, you are in business to make profit. So demonstrate that you can make profit from day one, that people are willing to pay. So, and I know back in 2017, I was just like so frustrated with the whole fundraising process because I was like, I just need more money for Google to show them that I can get to $50,000 a month in revenue. But I think if you keep your head down, you focus on your end users and your customers, you will get there with or without money. So that's why it's so important to be in touch with your end users, talk to them, and then just keep building to address their needs.
Yeah, good advice. You're right. Like the whole social raising capital without money does seem to work well, or it works in the social community side of business models. But certain business models, I don't think, like you said, you got to show some kind of sales at least. I'm curious, maybe as we kind of wrap up the interview here, in terms of running the company today, now that you really do have traction, I think you're fair to say you well and truly have product market fit. And we've talked enough about how you're planning to scale both sides. What is the greatest challenge? I often think with a tech startup, it's more tech, it's software related. You're a marketplace, so it could be marketplace related. But what do you personally find is the hardest thing to deal with?
People, both at the HQ level, and because people is what drive our business, the sitters. Just making sure we have the right ones on board, making sure that they're going to be loyal to us, making sure that they're not going to do anything stupid or silly that could then result in, God forbid, a lawsuit for us. And of course, those are going to be growing pains, and we will reach the critical mass where it's just inevitable that those things happen. But finding the right people, making sure they're not our bottleneck on our growth trajectory, because I am very, very adamant that even if we have to curb our growth due to a lack of supply, or let me rephrase that, a lack of the right supply, that is an unfortunate risk or slowdown I am willing to take. because I'm sorry to WAG if you guys are listening to this, but WAG, the on-demand dog walking app, they got $300 million in funding from SoftBank, and their Achilles heel was really the quality of their walkers. They had so many issues, they got slammed in reviews, and they just could never recover from that. And they went from having like a 20% market share down to, I think, 5% now, based on the most recent article I read. And they lost that to Rover, who does have a few more QA controls, but still not to the level that we have. So just making sure that we're a people-oriented business, making sure we elevate the capabilities of whoever joins us, whether it's HQ or on our supply side, and making sure they feel valued. Nothing is worse than coming to a job where your boss is constantly yelling at you, you're doing everything wrong. So just setting everybody up for success. And I think my corporate background and being a leader, and they did all the corporate manager training with me because I was leading teams, that still has a strong impact on how I run the business and how I manage my people. So, and just, treating everybody with respect. So yeah, is the biggest hurdle.
Yeah, no, also good advice. And I can, coming from experience, you can really tell. You did mention there you left the corporate world, and you said earlier that most of your friends were all heading in the direction they were graduating, and no doubt the salaries would have been healthy at the time, and yet you decide to take the leap. When you raise funding, I mean, even in this interview, you said you're still doing some sitting on your own platform because it's expensive to live in San Francisco and you've got a founder's salary right now. So it's not just to know your customer, it's a little bit to, be a true side hustle. That might be shocking to hear for some potential founders as well. What is your advice for those who are at that stage in their life, or maybe it's even later in life, but they're thinking, I'm going to leave the security of the salary and the employment to jump into a startup? And in your case, you really came to it without having lived in the startup world before. So it was truly a jump into something new. What's your advice to someone doing that? And maybe, is there anything different you would advise them to do compared to what you did?
I think my Achilles heel is that I'm a very decisive person. So when I'm motivated and passionate about something, I just go do it and I figure it out, no matter how broke it leaves me or, how miserable I am, because it's hard. You eventually figured it out, and hard work always pays off. So just if you think you have a great idea, if you want to go pursue something you're really passionate about, just go do it. Take the risk. It does help to have a nest egg, or just, a little chunk of money set aside, which I didn't have, but I was so decisive and ready to do this that I was just like, I'm going to figure it out. It's fine. And, I was like, if everything fails, I can be a cat sitter and support myself that way. And that still holds true today. But also, when you're ready to jump off the cliff and take the leap, please make sure you have done some research on your idea. Make sure it's validated. Make sure if you're joining an early stage startup team, maybe you're not the founder, please do your diligence on them. Make sure you are willing and able to work with these people for the next 10 years to make sure the equity is worth your time and money and opportunity cost. So have some money set aside, be decisive and jump in, but do your research beforehand.
Also sound advice. Maybe last question for you, Sonia. Second last question. First of all, you're growing. Is there any hiring positions you want to shout out? I never know. There might be a listener in here who wants to work with MeowTel. Is any positions particularly you're going for right now?
Yes, we need a junior full stack developer, or someone who does full stack but also mobile development, specifically React for our mobile app. And then we always need support specialists. So if you want to dive right on into our sitter vetting process and support our customers with help tickets and helping, them have a great experience, we're always hiring for those seats. So you can email me, Sonia, Sonya, at meowtel.com if you want to chat more.
Awesome. And I'm assuming meowtel.com would have possibly those listings, or is there a external job site you put job postings on, or?
Not yet. Okay. But so yeah, just email me or email bellhop@meowtel.com.
Email. So last question then. Let's say we get you back on the show in 5 years' time. What would you like to be talking about regarding MeowTel? Where would you like to see it? I know it's a long time, 5 years, but roughly speaking.
Yeah, I want MeowTel to be a household name if you are a cat parent. I want us to have national exposure, national coverage, and for everyone to equate the word or the phrase cat sitting with MeowTel. Just like if you're going to search for something, you go Google it. That would be the biggest honor, to own a a service, I guess, and have the brand represent the service type. So that's where we want to be in 5 years.
Nice. And do you see yourself doing much like you're doing now, or do you think your role would be different then?
Oh man. Well, I will for sure have like stepped out of the daily grind and being in the weeds with our customers a little bit. Of course, I'll still do a little because I just can't help myself, but I will be doing more high level strategy, hiring CFOs, C-level people, eventually finding my replacement CEO, maybe, and just thinking more high level strategy.
Okay, awesome. Sonia, thank you for taking the time. Anything else you want to throw at us before we wrap up the call?
I don't think so. Just if you want to be a cat, but you still want to be a nomad, you can be a cat sitter when you come visit the US and get free accommodation with overnights. But yeah, no, I'm good. So thank you for having me. This has been great.
No, thank you. Yeah, and that's a good point too. Like it's cat sitting, but as the cat sitter, you get to stay in someone else's house too, right? So it's kind of like an Airbnb. Is that, yeah, that's not a benefit you don't hear about.
Yeah, or the other services like trustedhousesitters.com, where you travel the world and get free accommodation. So you can technically do the same with MeowTel.
Yeah, except you're getting paid to do it rather than just getting free accommodation. So it's even better. So yeah, interesting. Okay, so MeowTel, I will put the link, but it's meow like a cat, tell like hotel.com. Thank you, Sonia. Good luck with everything in the future. And hopefully we will get to talk in maybe even 1 or 2 years with the continued growth. And obviously as an angel investor in your company, I wish you the best of luck. And I love your updates. So, not every investment I do does the updates like you do. And it's so great to read that, ongoing, whether bad or good, as you went through the COVID, it was just great to hear what was happening there and knowing you were still alive, more than anything. And then now as things are much better, and hopefully we'll continue just to see that the passion get lit and see the continued growth. So keep up the good work.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Sonia Petkovich. That was a fun one for me, especially because I got to hear a little more behind the scenes of a company that I'm an angel investor in. I have a very, very small share in her company, MeowTel, and I'm excited about its future. I really do think it's got a potential to own the space that it's in, and you can see that's very much Sonia's goal. Just a little insight into angel investing in case you've never done it or you are curious about it. I will be straight up with you. I'm relatively new to it. I did have one very early investment already exit, but that was one kind of outlier. More recently, in the last 3-4 years, I've been putting a lot more investments out there. Small investments. They're anywhere from $2,000 all the way up to maybe $50,000 when you're going back in, investing a second and a third time in a company that's already, doing well. And I very much follow the philosophy that Jason Calacanis puts in his book, Angel, and what he talks a lot about on his This Week in Startup podcast. It's very much because of Jason that I got more serious. I read his book. I listened to his podcast. I joined his syndicate. And seeing the potential companies that came through his syndicate and also a few other places like AngelList and some other syndicates I joined really made me get excited about the potential not to put my entire net worth into angel investing. It really is a small proportion. I'm in my 40s, early 40s, so I'm not young enough that I would be putting 50% of my net worth in angel investing because I could lose it all, but I'm happy to put 10% in, even 20% potentially once the winners start to surface, with the expectation of some big returns. Like there will be no bigger return in terms of multiples, I think, in terms of investment than I will get from angel investing, assuming even one of these companies does any kind of result that would be considered a good result. If any of them become a unicorn, of course, that's a $1 billion valuation plus, then the result will be even better. That'll be like a minimum 20 plus return on initial investment. Some of them, if they reach that point, we can be talking 100 times the investment money, and you're not going to get 100 times a return on anything in the stock market or property investing. Maybe if you're the founder of your own company, you're obviously going to get 100 times return because you probably didn't, put much money in it, but you put a whole lot of sweat equity in. So that's the only place where you can potentially get a similar kind of outcome, but it is very high risk. So that's clear. Sonia is just one of about 33 companies I have. I should say MeowTel. It's not Sonia, it's her company that I'm invested in. And there are very different results. Like Sonia is one of a few of the companies that are in my portfolio that is now, she had trouble during COVID for very obvious reasons, but is now today, especially, most of 2021 as we record this, has seen some very good, solid growth, the kind of growth you're looking for from an angel investment. Obviously, I can't reveal what I know around numbers because that's private information from the company, but it's great. And if it continues along those lines, then this will be a great success story. But you never know. Companies can stall. They can slow their growth dramatically. They might get an exit early that turns out not to be as big. I had one of my companies exit early for a 3x return, which is still considered, pretty amazing if you think about it. Getting 3 times your money back after just a year or two would be huge in a stock market or a property investment or something like that. That would be called a crazy boom market, like we are in some parts of the world right now. So that's considered a good result in angel investing, but not the kind of result we're looking for. We're looking for the 10x plus kind of results. So time will tell with MeowTel. And of course, I also back Sonia and the company because I actually want the service. I really am hoping that the MeowTel gets up and running soon in Montreal. So where I live, I can get a cat. And when I want to travel, we have no problem getting someone in to look after the cat the whole time. And I thought it was actually a really interesting point about potentially you could be a digital nomad pet sitter. You could use something like MeowTel, get paid for looking after cats, and get your accommodation for free. So it could be a way to be an amazing, digital nomad hack, the way some of those house sitting companies are used for that. But that's usually just free homes. This is actually getting paid to stay in someone else's house and, of course, look after their cat or their cats. Okay, that's enough. As I said, I hope you enjoyed the interview with Sonia. And even if you're just listening to this podcast as a potential entrepreneur or a current entrepreneur, hopefully you got something out there regarding Sonia's advice, investing, hiring, building a two-sided marketplace. There was a lot in that. And on that note, if you do know a person, a friend, a family member, a colleague who's considering leaving their job, or maybe they're young and they're just about to graduate from high school or university and they want to be an entrepreneur, share this episode with them because it'll be one of an important toolkit resources, a research tool to give them insight into what they need to start learning about as an entrepreneur. Sonia, I think, is an interview guest for that because she has just lived it. She's just gone from not being an entrepreneur to being one, learning about, like she said, cap tables and raising funds and the legal structure and all that sort of thing. So she surfaced a lot of the ideas that anyone who's a new entrepreneur will need to know about. So if you have one of those people in your life, send them to Vested Capital, episode number 17 with Sonia Petkovich, or just send them to Vested Capital in general, and they'll get lots of interviews with people like Sonia. You can subscribe to the show. Please do so. Hit the plus button, the follow button, the subscribe button in any of the apps you use to listen to podcasts. Google, Apple, Amazon, Spotify. I'm in all those places. Vested Capital. You can find the show there. You can also find it on my blog. Just head to yarrow.blog/pod, P-O-D. And that's the podcast page where all the episodes are slowly released as we release them on the feed. Okay. That's it from me. My name is Yarrow. I will talk to you on the very next episode of Vested Capital.